Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit with the Good News Gang. I'm joined today by my tag team partners, Pastor Kim Metzer from Hope and Welcome Corners, UMC in Hastings, and Pastor Curtis Clark from Marysville, UMC. And I am your host, Matt West from Marble Memorial, UMC in Milan.
Oh, yeah.
Not Milan, but Milan. Yes, and we are the Good News Gang, and glad to join you once again as we take this opportunity to wrestle with those things that are on our minds and our hearts this week, and see which direction God takes us. So to kick things off, I have a question here to break the ice. What is your favorite day of the week, and why?
Favorite day of the week?
Week.
Oh, that's almost like a loaded question.
It really is. We all have their.
As a pastor, you're supposed to say, "Oh, of course, Sunday."
Right.
I'm gonna be on. It's Friday for me. It's my day off.
Pastor Kim, favorite day? Why is Friday your favorite day? Oh, you said your day off.
That's my day off.
Yes.
Yeah,
I am paying attention. I'm sorry. So, Pastor Kim, favorite day of the week?
Man, I don't know. And it might be Sunday afternoon for the same reason.
Oh,
Yeah, just got, and I hate to say this, same with Curtis, got through Sunday morning. Yeah.
There's always that nap somewhere Sunday afternoon.
I'm not a napper, but
well, you know, it's rough after, you know, the 2 hours a week that we work that,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
We need that R&R after, you know, worship on Sundays. So yeah, boy, I don't know.
Especially in the fall. I'm always been a fan of Sunday afternoon football. So,
yeah, I guess I'm gonna have, you know, as much as I like my Fridays and Saturdays, I'd probably go with, you know, Sunday afternoon, just because that is probably the one time a week that my brain seems to unplug from everything else that's been going on all week long. So
Yep.
It's when I can enter into my vegetative state and not think or worry about anything and just kind of absorb whatever's on the TV.
Our Sunday afternoon is like Friday night for the Monday through Friday work crowd.
So we know where to look for you, is what you're saying, honestly?
Right. So Sunday afternoon, we know where Kim and her husband are.
Yeah, we're at the bar, of course. That's what we do.
Happy hour on Sunday.
Yeah.
Well, what would have happened if Jesus had turned the stones into bread while being tempted in the wilderness? And what are we to learn from his ability to resist? That's quite a transition.
I'm gonna say that's really changing gears.
Yeah,
it really.
It's like going from first to fifth, and
grinding it a bit. Yeah.
So again, what would have happened if Jesus had turned the stones into bread while being tempted in the wilderness?
And we just talked about this Sunday, right? Wasn't that? No, that was my last week. Sorry.
Well, I mean, if he gives into that temptation, he's giving into an authority other than God's.
Oh,
That's for one.
Mm-hmm.
He's, you know, and I think, does it then, you know, kind of cascade into the other temptations that Satan offers him after that?
Right. Well, because the second part of the question is what do we learn from his ability to resist? And I think, you know, hopefully it sets an example that makes it easier for us to resist temptation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It goes, as we'll see in later questions, about autonomy. You know, how do we make our choices in life? And I can see where that first icebreaker question kind of fits in, is, you know, our favorite day of the week. Why is it our favorite? And I think the common theme in all of our answers was our time is our own on that day, on that Sunday afternoon or that Friday. It's our time off, and and we get to choose what we do, or have more autonomy over our choices, I guess. Yeah.
So what was the second part of that question again, Matt?
What are we to learn from his ability to resist
this temptation?
Mm.
Well, I think, in all three of those examples, in all three of the temptations he faces, of course, the first thing he does is rebuke the temptation with scripture.
Right.
And so I think there's power in that. There's power in God's word. There's power in relying on God's word to help resist and stave off those temptations.
Well, and it's interesting, I mean, I guess you could have picked any of them, but kind of curious as to why they picked, turning the stones into bread for this particular question. But
right,
I guess you could have picked any of the temptations. And
right.
Yeah, it's I mean, as far as what would have happened, I mean, I don't know. That one's got me stumped. Well, moving from there, it says from the book Anarchy, State and Utopia, which was written in 1974 by Robert Nozick.
Pretty recent then.
Oh, yeah. Suppose there were an experience machine that would give you any experience you desired. Super duper neuropsychologist could stimulate your brain. Yeah. So that you would think, so that you would think and feel you were writing a great novel or making a friend or reading an interesting book. All the time you would be floating in a tank with electrodes attached to your brain. Should you plug into this machine for life, pre-programming your life experiences? Of course, while in the tank, you won't know that you're there. You'll think it's all actually happening. Sounds like the Matrix to me.
Yeah, it was actually, I remember a movie back in, I think it was the early 80s called Altered States. I think it was with William Hurt, where that was the premise of the movie. He was floating in this tank and had stuff dialed into his head, and he was doing all these weird, experiences.
Sometimes I wonder if that's actually our life.
Right.
Am I really in charge of do I get to make my own choices? I don't. Are there cameras watching me everywhere?
Right.
Well, there are, but.
Yeah. Are we just.
Well, would you, looking at the question, I mean, would you plug into this machine, for life, knowing that you could pre-program your life experiences? Like, your body would physically, I guess, be in a state of relaxation and wouldn't require you to do anything because everything was playing out in your mind as if it was happening in real life.
Right. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so you wouldn't have any sadness or any.
Well, you could pre-program it in.
Yeah, but that's an interesting little path to go down. Would you program in just good, joyful experiences, or would you program in sadness, grief, loss,
right.
Death?
Or would everything be perfect?
Right.
But how would you know it was perfect without the imperfect?
See, now we're getting into these philosophical questions.
Yeah.
How would you know if it's a good feeling if you've never experienced a bad feeling?
Right.
Well, and I think it, relates to the last question, having this choice, if there were such a machine, it's a temptation. Like I could get away from all the ugliness of the world and just float in this machine and everything would be wonderful. It'd be like living in Pleasantville, everything would be great. Nothing would go wrong. And then, and then the argument in terms of resisting the temptation is, what Pastor Kim said. And how do you know it's perfect without the imperfect? I mean, I am a firm believer in that. It's a lot of those hardships or bad experiences that lead us to be the people that we are, or to, make us better. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking at this in terms of, what we've discussed or the questions we've brought up by, saying yes to this question is it's a temptation. Like,
right.
Hey, jump in my machine and everything will be wonderful.
Right. And I guess I wonder too, post event, post era, after this machine, after this experience, do you have memory of it? Because for me, kind of going on what you were saying, Matt, if, when we go through life and we have these good moments and these bad moments, they're still part of our memory, good or bad. And you're right, they help shape us, define us, move us through life, to help us grow, to help us understand, to open ourselves up to other points of view and other people's circumstances.
Well, I got to imagine that, depending on the length of time you were there, I would imagine, whether it was a day or a month or a year, coming out of it and then seeing what was actually going on in the world, might be, an overload, and too much, that it might hurt you more than if you would have just lived it out instead of, going into this machine. I mean, I don't know. The analogy going through my head is, Captain America being frozen for all those years and then, like waking up and going, what is this? And having to adjust after losing all those years, it could be too much for some people, especially if you're, living in a neurological utopia and then to come out of it. And if you don't have that memory or, to have such a probably drastic shift in maybe what you were living in, living out in that machine to then come out into the world. I mean, like, what if you were living in Ukraine right now and all of a sudden you come out and your country's in war? Like, whoa,
whoa,
what's going on?
And I think too, from a faith perspective, we're not, our faith never promises that everything's going to be perfect.
Right.
And everything's going to be sunshine and lollipops.
No.
What? We're told going in that this is going to be that life is going to be difficult. But with faith, with trust, with hope, that the storms that come upon us, that we have a way to navigate through those, not around them, but through them.
Right. Well, and look at again, going back to scripture, look at the prophets. There wasn't a one of them that didn't go through a phase of suffering to get to where they were, destined to go. I mean, to try and lead a group of people and then to be, basically beaten up by them, whether it be, physically or mentally or what. But I mean, God didn't say like, hey, let me give you the Staples easy button to get these people where I want you to get them. And, but instead it's like, it's a hard path, but it's going to end up being all right in the end. Right.
So I've been looking, half paying attention as I was looking for a quote that I saw the other day. And I think this was it. I don't know if it really applies now that I found it, but good decisions come from experience and experience comes from bad decisions. So you got to have both.
Yeah.
So I guess it does apply.
Well, and just to add a tidbit from, the questions there, I didn't read the rest of this part where it says the basic idea here is that we may have very good reasons to plug ourselves into such a machine. Our lives are often characterized by less than ideal conditions like toil and suffering. It's understandable why some would opt for something substantially better. even if it is artificial.
Yeah. And then, so I just ended up doing a Google search on bad choices. And another quote that came up was, "We are not given a good life or a bad life. We are given life. And it's up to you to make it good or bad."
But I mean, with that last part, I can understand if you're somebody who feels as if, like, from the get-go, life has been bad. Why wouldn't you? You know, I think it's easier for us that have been fortunate enough or blessed enough in our lives to be like, well, you know, yeah, I could see it, but, you know, we've maybe went through some turmoil that's, you know, because we've had things pretty good, that we were able to see our way through it and get out on the other side of it. But for somebody who's, you know, just maybe had bad experience after bad experience or whatnot from the get-go and not really having been in their shoes, I can't relate. You know, I could see them being like, yeah, get me out of here. Plug
There's
me
some
in.
people, I say, if they didn't have bad luck, they'd have no luck at all.
Right.
Truly.
That's for sure. Well, moving along here, it says, would you ride in a car or on a bus that was an autonomous vehicle? In other words, instead of a human driver, it relies on cameras, sensors, radar, and intelligent software, which have shown they can potentially reduce accidents caused by human error. In an age of autonomous vehicles, what does it mean to say, Jesus, take the wheel? Sorry. Yeah. So would you one ride in an autonomous vehicle?
That's a big no for me.
Really? So I guess off track. I mean, because we do ride in autonomous vehicles that are on tracks. You know, think about airport shuttles and
Monorail.
those kinds of, yeah.
But even like a monorail at Disney, there's someone up in that.
Right. Kind of guiding it. Yeah. Yeah. So you wouldn't, huh, Curtis?
No.
No. Is it because you've been in the Detroit area for a long time?
No, it's the same reason why I'll never go on a cruise. I like to be in control of things. I like to drive. I'm not even a good front seat rider.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
No, but from the it's just I'm just not ready to put that kind of trust in technology yet, I think.
Well, it doesn't help when there's, you know, the occasional TV or movie, you know, TV show or movie where somebody hacks into the car system and takes control of it. You know, that doesn't help the, you know, the paranoia that people may have about this idea of like riding in a fully, you know, computerized vehicle. I'm slightly torn because I do most of the driving in our family a lot of the times. So to be able to just sit and, you know, not have to drive, I'm there's an appeal there to me, but at the same time, I guess, you know, I'm in that boat with Curtis where even when I'm not driving, there are times, and I think some of that stems from being a former driver's ed instructor where
yeah.
What are you doing? Don't know.
Start in the same boat, but it's not a cruise ship.
Yeah.
And I wonder, so I'm ambivalent too, but I wonder if part of it's my gender. You know, growing up in the age that I did, the men have done most of the driving, and Steve and I often take turns depending on whose car we're taking, or, you know, if I have to do some reading or he has to do some work. But I love to drive. I like being in control too, but I also love to cruise. And I've seen the bridge and all that entails. And it's not fully autonomous on a cruise ship either. So
I know.
No, but I'm just saying, I don't know, you know, what if the cruise ship was fully autonomous? I've seen all the people that it takes to maneuver a ship. What if we automated that? I don't know.
Well, let me clarify. I mean, Melissa does drive occasionally. She just doesn't like driving around big cities, you know. But if there's something like where we're, you know, going somewhere, you know, and I need to do some work or whatever, I mean, she does.
So you're like us, but typically Steve drives.
Yeah.
And it was always my dad, but my mom didn't get her license till after they were married. So once I got my license, I drove. My mom, I don't know, I can't be in the passenger seat when she drove either. Yeah, I don't know. Comparison between being on a cruise and in a city, I'd be comfortable with the cruise ship, but I don't know about.
Well, and it's interesting because of the fact that sorry, just the squirrel and the fact that my wife could hear our conversation in the other room and just pointed out
why you clarified?
the other issue with when she's driving is the times that I act like a driver's ed instructor while she's driving, and she doesn't like that. So
hear you, Melissa. My husband's not a driver's ed instructor, and I still feel the same way.
But you know, it's interesting in the part of the conversation, you know, because I've known, you know, older couples that like the wife never drove,
right?
You know, and she didn't want to, didn't have any interest. So I'm curious, like, for those people who aren't necessarily comfortable with driving, would they be more comfortable letting an autonomous car drive them around? Or would they be more freaked out? You know, I don't know. That'd be curious.
Yeah.
You know, just to see for those, because like I can remember when I was teaching driver's ed, I had a student one time, you know, he was basically taking it to get his license, but really had no desire. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do to get around? You know, and of course, you know, at that time his plan was as well, I'll live in a city where there's public transportation and I don't have to. Like going, well, all right.
So he would have been comfortable with.
Good luck with that, you know. But part of it was, you know, stemmed from his mom and the fact that, you know, he shared with me his mom would avoid expressway driving. Like she would take back roads everywhere she went because she didn't want to go out on the expressway. And I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, so I get it. I mean, I'm sure there's an appeal for, you know, for and against, you know, letting some machine drive you around. But it says here too, in his book Ghost Road, Beyond the Driverless Car, futurist Anthony Townsend imagines multiple autonomous buses running as a convoy that is spacious as a subway, 6, 7, or 8 buses in length, but costing far less than a train. Autonomous vehicles used in this way could free up parking, reduce emissions, and make public transportation more accessible to people in rural areas.
Which is crucial. So I, as you know, live in a rural area and transportation is huge. And watching some of the Facebook groups in the last couple of days, there was someone that needed to get her kid to school. It was looking for an Uber driver because the local transit couldn't get out to their house until 1:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
So looking for someone to pick up their kid and take them to school. And another person was looking for someplace with a room to rent right here in town so that their nephew could get to his in-town job until they could find a decent car. As you know, those are hard to come by these days too, is a decently priced used car. So something that would help the rural areas especially would be welcomed. I mean, if we had something autonomous rolling through this county on a regular basis, you know, without having to pay the wages, I mean, you can't find employees. So that's where the other advantage is to that.
Well, and we live in a state, you know, that was the home of the automobile industry. Right. And so this state was designed to make people have to drive everywhere they went, you know. So, I mean, other than, a large city like Grand Rapids or Detroit, public transportation is minimal at best. Very few have it, or it might be a couple of like dial-a-ride buses or something if you're lucky. But I mean, a lot of places just don't have it. And so, I mean, transportation is difficult. We had an exchange student one year, and that was certainly a eye-opening experience to him, in the fact that, he lived in Germany, and it's great, like you hopped on a train and you got where you wanted, and it's like, no train here, buddy.
Yeah.
Right. No bus, no train, not in this area, so it's,
and as someone who grew up in Metro Detroit, and I can remember when the company I worked for before I came into ministry, one of the big issues we had was trying to get employees who could work but didn't have the vehicle to get to work, and were coming from across town, and the at the time, and it still is, the bus system in Metro Detroit was just so unreliable,
right,
that you had people who had were leaving their house 3 hours before they had to start a shift to try and compensate for the 4 or 5 different buses they would have to take to get to a work that's 20 miles away.
Yeah.
And convert, and like you just said with your exchange student, we've been to different cities, Washington D.C. that has a great subway system. Chicago has the elevated train. These bigger cities that have these kinds of systems that allow people to get from the suburbs into the city and vice versa, that again we just don't have here, and it's really a shame, because it really does affect the poor population.
It does. Yep.
Still laughing about that part, what it means to let Jesus take the wheel.
and here, I guess here's a question too, and maybe if Melissa is still in earshot, because I know she's in the insurance business. In the age of autonomous vehicles, if an autonomous vehicle is driving, say it's my autonomous vehicle that I'm a passenger in, and that autonomous vehicle gets in an accident, am I liable for that accident even though I wasn't driving?
Well, she can't hear everything that we're talking about or what, but that is certainly something I would follow up with. I guess part of it, I think, for the little bit of conversations we've had about insurance or what, but I would dare to say it probably would depend. Like, if you own the vehicle,
right,
then probably you would be at fault. But if it was like a public transportation type thing, like a taxi or what, then I would imagine the company would be.
Yeah. Who programmed it, I guess, would be the...
I'll be curious. I'll have to ask her, because I'm wondering if they've even talked, if that's even a conversation in the insurance world.
And is it going to increase? What do you think? Would it increase rates or decrease rates? For, like, again, because we know all the car companies they're all coming out with them at some point. I mean, Ford is investing huge amounts of time, energy, resources downtown into their autonomous program. I just have to wonder, from an insurance point of view, is that gonna, if someone purchases an autonomous vehicle, does your insurance go up, down? What's the deal? And it was weird. When we were in Grand Rapids last summer, I want to say that they were doing some testing in downtown Grand Rapids, because we would occasionally see and they would have a sign on the car. It was weird seeing a car go by with someone sitting in the passenger's side, and it's moving down the street and there's no one.
Freaky.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they were. Might be still are. I should know this. I live right down the road from Grand Rapids.
Well, I sent my insurance agent a text to ask if that's even a conversation in the insurance world right now.
Right.
Well, moving along here, it says the leaders of the Independent Orthodox Church of Ukraine called Russian President Vladimir Putin the modern day Antichrist, who is going against the will and law of God in his ongoing invasion of the besieged country. Excuse me. This follows a previous statement made by Metropolitan. Oh boy.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to pronounce that one.
The Epiphanes. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this dude.
Anyway, this person from Ukraine on Sunday saying in an official statement that the spirit of the Antichrist operates in the leader of Russia. He claimed that the signs were revealed to indicate this, citing pride, devotion to evil, ruthless and false religiosity. He further stated that this was Nazi leader Adolf Hitler during World War II. This is what Putin has become today. Discuss these strong statements by religious leaders in Ukraine. Are such strong political statements appropriate? And will they have much of an impact? So I guess the gist of it is that, you know, Putin's being referred to as the Antichrist, and you know, he's showing signs of it to back up what they're saying. So I guess, you know, let's just begin with the question: are these strong political statements appropriate?
It's hard to say. I mean, you know, the people who are making them are obviously being impacted directly by this person's evilness, for sure. And so, you know, from the comfort of my basement, of our homes here, I think I don't know if it's proper for me to say one way or the other. You know, from a theological point of view, is Putin the Antichrist? I don't believe so. Although I've seen, and maybe you have too, man, on TikTok, there's been a couple of people of, you know, some different evangelists, prominent ones, believing that, you know, he is that, you know, lining biblical prophecy with who he is and this and that. And, you know, they keep saying, keep an eye on Israel. He's going to march down to Israel and this and that. And again, that's not something that I subscribe to, but that's just me.
Yeah. You know, I certainly struggle when people pray in that fashion, you know, like the evil Putin, to take the evil out of them, you know, to think of him as the Antichrist. I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, was not a huge fan of our last president, but I never, you know, painted him in that picture, or when I prayed for him, you know, I tried to find, I guess, you know, a loving way in hopes that maybe he would see God's love the way that we do, you know, and helping form decisions that were made. But you know, I kind of struggle, but again, you know, not being in that country, you know, not having to deal with the current situation or what. I mean, I guess I can see where they might think that, you know, but at the same time, I guess, especially, you know, coming from the church, is that really the approach or the statement that should be made about, you know, any leader?
Right.
Because it, you know, in terms of the other question, it says, will they have much of an impact? Certainly has an impact on the members of a church if the leader is, you know, making statements like that.
Right.
What do you think, Pastor Kim? I see the gears spinning.
See the smoke coming out of the ears. I agree with you, Matt. I try to pray for Putin without calling names. I don't. Yeah. And that's what's disheartening all around when it comes to politics and calling out leaders for what they do. The ones that disparage our current president and instead of praying for him as you prayed for Trump, instead just disparage and I don't know. We're called to pray for our leaders, but we're also called to call out evil where we see it.
Right, to resist evil and injustice in all forms. So it's part of our baptism liturgy and part of our profession of faith.
So calling out that injustice, I don't know. Do we label people as the Antichrist? I mean, we know that one is coming, and maybe he's it.
Well, I mean, it's certainly something to, pause for thought. I mean, by no means do I think, Putin is a good man just because of the fact that he is trying to overtake a group of people. It's not just about land, it's about taking over people. But, I guess in my eyes, to live out a life as a true follower of Christ, then I should be praying, that he sees the good or finds the good instead of the ill intent that he has right now to try and take over Ukraine.
Right.
But, it is certainly a theological question of like, or, do we focus on calling out the evil, or, do we try to shed some light on the good in hopes that, he sees it?
And I read a statistic this morning that 50% of the Russian people are actually in favor of this. So overall, in the Gen Y and millennial age groups, I think it was 39% opposed and 29% in favor. The other ones just don't care, I guess. I don't know. But so it's
divided.
Well, I think
it sounds like some other place we know.
Yeah, I think there's concern too that we don't know if the Russian people are receiving full information as to what is really going on in Ukraine.
Oh, and they're not, and neither are we.
Right. I mean, we've all probably seen different videos and images that are very, very disturbing.
But everything can be manipulated.
Right. But I think, to kind of get back to the question, there has been that moniker, that label put on other, and it kind of mentions that in the question. There's been that has been put on other people in history, people of evil, Hitler. I mean, you could look at the some other Russian leaders who have been as brutal, if not more brutal, than what Putin is doing right now. In the extermination of people. You could look at leaders in Africa who were doing the same thing and label them as Antichrist. My goodness, there were people in this country who were labeling President Obama.
I was just going to say that
as the Antichrist, and
yes,
so I think we throw around that term in the theological circles sometimes a bit cavalierly, and that's a word. And I think we have to be very careful when we do that, because we can read through the book of Revelation and point out what signs, and we can try and interpret those signs. And again, people are doing that now and thinking that this is it. It's not my perspective of that, but I just think that I would urge great caution.
Yeah.
Any person of faith in talking in those kind of terms about what's going on right now.
Well, because it can have an impact.
Absolutely.
And in some cases it might do more harm, than good. And so, it's very important that we certainly are cautious, knowing how much damage the tongue can do to just let words like that fly off of our tongue, but
And that's not to say that he's not evil.
Right.
I believe he is. But to say he is the Antichrist.
Right. No. Who are we to say?
Right.
I don't know. I just look at pictures of him and look into his eyes. Dude, what went wrong? What went wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. But, it's encouraging on the other side of the conversation to see those believers, that are, whether they're in a subway station, trying to find cover from what's going on, or in other places that are, bringing praise and honor to God and trying to be that hope or light for their country, and putting their faith in God's hands. That
puts things in perspective.
Yeah, it's powerful, that in the midst of battle, that there are still people that are that strong in their faith, right? That they're like, okay, this is how we're gonna fight it.
Right.
We're gonna gather, we're gonna sing, we're gonna pray, we're gonna put this in God's hands and know that he's in control of everything. Yes, and hopefully it's something that comes to an end sooner rather than later.
Yes,
yeah, it's just you think like these days are kind of we hope anyway that in 2022 that these kind of days would be behind us, but yet
right.
There's certainly the concern of like, well, could this lead to World War III? Let's pray to God it doesn't, but certainly love the support that numerous countries are, trying to offer to help Ukraine in doing this. And certainly, it's been interesting to see, American companies putting their foot down and stopping business in Russia, to show their dislike with what's going on. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. And of course, gas prices will go up because of the conflict now, because Biden has, put a restriction on oil, or sanctions on oil from Russia. But the thing is
it's already going up before.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You only get,
but I mean, anytime there is a conflict of this nature, gas prices go up even before any sanctions or anything of that nature happens. So, I mean, but then, there's a whole other conversation and who to point the finger at, but it's, sorry, it's not the president of the United States.
It never is. No matter what side of the aisle they're on.
Exactly. Well, yeah, what a conversation to go from our favorite day of the week to what kind of impact our statements may have on people. But and in the middle of that, we were living in a utopia and driving autonomous cars. It's been quite a journey.
This week.
Yes. Well, before we say goodbye to our audience, any final thoughts you'd like to share with them before we say goodbye?
Make good choices, friends.
Speak kindly.
Yes. Yeah. And begin with love.
Begin with love. Reckless love.
That's right. If we can be slow to speak and slow to anger and just begin with love, then I think we're on the right track to hopefully, making everybody's day better.
We're expanding our circle this week.
Yeah. Well, thank you, my friends, for joining me for this conversation. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit. And we look forward to seeing you next time. But until then, peace be with you.